Good afternoon. Thank you for that warm introduction. I'm excited to share what we discussed in our breakout group. So, at the top, I'll name a theme that came up throughout, which is that we're excited about this concept of field building. We like the idea of being part of a movement. And we don't necessarily mean being a part of a specific network with acronyms and jargon and that kind of thing, but instead being part of a broader field and community coming together to do this work. And I believe one of the speakers called it nation building work earlier, which is so exciting. So let me name the four things that came out as being key to building that network, or excuse me, that field, that movement effectively. One was having a learning community, two, shared values, three, supportive relationships, and four, owning our own narrative. So I'll say a little bit about each, and I'll also name that some of these are about what we need, and some of these are about how we do it. So on the learning community, this is about sharing what works, particularly if something led to a breakthrough, so that we can see what we can spread if we think it's replicable. This is about having a buddy system, sometimes based on someone who's further along in the journey as a local practitioner and can help bring me along. And sometimes it's another community that's exactly where I'm at, but in a different geography. And that might spark some creativity and some new solutions we hadn't thought of before. So definitely having that learning community in place was big. Another was shared values. We talked about how even if you come at this from a different industry than we do, right? Think public-private partnerships, as long as we have a shared set of values about how we do the work and what we're trying to bring to the people we work with, then we can help each other out. And there was a beautiful example in Dallas of hospitals and local government officials and schools, folks who are seizing opportunities in the community from very different angles, coming together to address issues of racial justice because they shared values in their service of the community. Another one is on the supportive relationships. This was a focus on how open can we be with one another? How authentic can we be with one another? Can we create a space where we can truly be vulnerable, especially during these times of change, and say what we're struggling with, what we're not sure about, what we want to give a try, what we're seeing, what we're learning, and what we're still questioning. That honest, open dialogue and a place where we can show up and be our most authentic selves and be affirmed is what's going to is going to create the space for us to break through. And then the last piece was owning our own narrative. And part of that is about having the platform to tell our own stories. But as someone in the group said, part of it is also when something bad gets said about us, we want that bad thing to land, as they put it, on a soft bed of a soft mattress of us having told our own stories and who we are and what lived experiences we've been through, so that that one thing falls upon a narrative of our truth and that's been told in our voice. So there's so much more I could share. We had a lot of conversation. That's all my notes. But to sum it up, we are excited about field building. We are excited about being in this movement together. And four things that felt critical were a learning community, shared values, supportive relationships, and telling our own narrative.
So, our group, we had a great discussion. It's always energizing to be with people who care that much about building neighborhood capacity and neighborhoods themselves. A couple of really important themes emerged as a course during the course of our conversation. The first was sort of reinforcing this idea of the neighborhood as the fundamental unit of change in this work, the thing that can move outcomes the fastest, the things that we can learn what works and what doesn't work the fastest. And then after we have established that understanding, being able to take those lessons and those learnings to scale. was something that came through like loud and clear in our conversation. So, the importance of the neighborhood as the centerpiece of this work is something that rings true with me. But I was glad to hear colleagues feel kind of the same way. One of the things that Jim Shelton always talks about on our team is, our regional efforts only being as strong as the most disinvested, marginalized neighborhoods and communities within those regions. So I think we maintain that frame of saying, who is struggling the most, and are our initiatives, is our work lifting them up or affecting them positively, that being the litmus test as to whether or not we're doing real work. So that came through in our conversation. The second point that I wanted to make and pull out of our conversation was this need. I think that place-based initiatives feel to be listened to around what their capacity building needs actually are, right? Or what their real needs as a place-based organization are. Oftentimes what we hear is that their needs were communicated, and then funders, other stakeholders, power brokers substitute their judgment, substitute their ideas for what they've been told from the people who are on the ground actually doing the work. And so, we think that that is a really important point, especially as we're reading, for us to understand and internalize, but that what we are hearing, what is being communicated to us by the people on the ground, is what should actually lead the work, right? And that we shouldn't substitute our judgment or substitute our thinking for what the people who are closest to it are telling us they actually need. And so whether that's patient capital, whether that is operational dollars, whether that is data infrastructure, whatever it is, we should be taking our lead from the people who are closest to the work. So those two things are probably the most notable kind of elements that came out of the conversation. But it was incredibly energizing, and glad to hear that so much of the work we're doing seems aligned with those ideas.